Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today I am going to get into a video on AI and video games, particularly what's going to be happening in the future. And this is more for game developers and others, but in this, what I'm going to be showing is where we're currently at and how to prepare. So currently, and I'll be using this to keep it as simple as possible. Currently where we're at, if you're using a open cloud model, something like, for example, Bing, just as an example, is how it works is you interface with the system, Bing system. It goes out to OpenAI and an API, and depending on if it needs to, it will go back and that's it. So say, for example, hey, how are you? It sends that out. It figures out what needs to be the next words. And from there, you get back the I'm fine or whatever it says. Now, with that, if say, for example, you're asking it a particular question, what OpenAI's job purely in this sense is to figure out what you're asking, and it's to feed the system, and that way it knows what to search for, and when it gets the information it can send that back to OpenAI and then get back whatever result that you want. So the interactions with OpenAI, you're dealing with about 4 interactions or more just to figure out whatever answer. And as anyone who's dealt with a local large language model knows, this is highly wasteful. So with stuff I deal with on the other channel, and anyone with a local large language model knows, is 99% of the stuff can happen locally. And when it does, it can go out to the internet and grab whatever information. So for example, if I ask it something about turtles, it doesn't know anything about it. It will go out to the proper site and it will try to grab the information and bring it back. And depending on how I have it coded, it will tell me the sources and all the other stuff like Bing does. Now, and that prevents any API calls, anything to any, whatever. It all stays 100% locally, unless if it's searching for particular information or something like that. This is actually very useful when you're dealing with systems that shouldn't be out and about. It's like documents or whatever it may be, and sensitive documents or whatever it may be, and that way it all stays internally. It's something that I'm actually kind of surprised Samsung has such a big problem with their coders going and using open AI system when they can have their own internal large language model that's helping them code. Because I mean, the coders obviously want it, but because it makes it easier. But the company doesn't want it because you don't really know what OpenAI is getting and what they're going to be able to do with the information. Whereas if you have it locally, then you're not worried about that at all, ever, because it's all local. So with that one in mind, where I think it's going to go in the future, and keep in mind what Microsoft has with its newest update with, I think they call it Copilot or whatever. On some computers it has this, others that don't. But basically, you can ask it, set your computer to dark mode. It does the normal thing of actually going out and let's say for example, this is Bing's system. What happens is you say, hey, set my computer to dark mode. It sends it out to Bing's system. That sends it out to OpenAI's. OpenAI sends it back, and then it goes back. So OpenAI again figures out what you're asking, and then it tells the Bing system. Bing system takes the code and says, send this back, and then your computer interprets that and does what it needs to do. Even though you're just wanting a simple change dark mode setting, it requires all this. Whereas if it's all local, then you're not worried about all these other things, and it stays 100% local. It's a lot faster and it's much more efficient. Now, why is that important for us? And you as game developers and maybe modders and whatever it may be. Well, it's pretty obvious what's going to end up happening at some point, and I imagine within the next 6 months to a year, we'll probably hear something about it. And I'm not saying it's going to come out to computers within that time, but we're probably going to hear about it. If not a little bit longer, is this gonna be local instead of it going out to the internet and whatever. They can have a 7 billion parameter large language model on your local computer, which is good enough for most video games and most other things, and can run on even a Raspberry Pi. You're talking about 3 gigabytes, maybe 5 gigabytes at most, but around 3 gigabytes or so for the 7 billion parameter that goes on the computer. Could run very easy, very lightweight, and the thing will just be able to interface, and there you go. Now, let's say, for example, that you are a game developer and you want to use this. Let's assume that this is the local large language model that's on the machine, and let's assume I'm right. Microsoft puts this on this system, and you can somehow have access to it. Let's assume that this is the game itself, the file on the computer. What I think is going to happen is you're going to be able to have individual boxes, just call it whatever, and each one of these is going to preference a system. So say, for example, if you right now on ChatGPT, on OpenAI, or your local LLM, you say, I am going to be repairing my car. I only have set items. Can you help me repair my car and tell me what to do? By doing this, it actually preferences the system, and that way it stays within the actual realm of what do you need it to do, and the thing will come back and say yes or whatever. It might give you like a little bit of speech, but it'll basically say yes, and at that point, it's ready. And from there, you can say, I have whatever, and this is the problem. How do I fix it? And the other day I tested this, I already had a part fixed. I just, wondered if the Bing would do it. I said, I have a hose chafing onto a thing. I have the old hose and also a wire tie, and that's all I got. What do I do? And I said that after prefacing it, and the thing was able to give me a thing on, well, you need to split the old hose down, wrap it around the new hose, use a wire tie, and you got your chafe wrap right there. Well, with that, without prefacing, without getting it ready, the thing was wanting to go out and do some weird stuff and not be helpful at all. This is basically the preference. You're basically setting up the actual large language model to, this is the goals, this is what you want it to do, and this is what it knows. This is actually how Bing stuff works, by the way, with OpenAI's system. So what you have here is individual things. So let's say, for example, this is your main characters. You want their dialogue to be normal. So this will almost never go out to the large language model. Maybe you have it go out once in a while, but for the most part, it stays heavily restricted. Then you have things like, let's say, Skyrim villagers. So you have all these little boxes as individual villagers, and maybe this one's a male from a village, female from a village, this is from a different village, and so on. It really doesn't matter. So from that, let's say, for example, you're interacting with this villager. The code will come up and cue the system that you're dealing with this particular villager. And in that box is the stuff that it knows. It knows where that villager was, where it's going, what its normal daily habits is, and possible few things that you talk to it about, long-term memory, short-term memory, and stuff like that. So from that, it preferences that, it sends it out to the large language model on your machine. Your large language model will then use that to role play and look at what you're saying to the villager, and then it will send it back, and it will tell it basically sends the information what should be said, and even in some cases what should be done. So say, for example, it might say the villager is in a shop looking at the player, and the player starts flirting with the villager, and maybe the attribute of the villager is, high for liking the player or whatever. It really doesn't matter. So what happens is, if it has like a shyness value that's set to high, and all this is background information, it's sent to the local LLM, and from that it gets the actual dialogue, what's to be said, but also the actions, the immediate actions on what should be done. So in this case, if allowed, it might say to have blushing, maybe look down, or whatever it may be, to show embarrassment or whatever it may be, and have certain type of emotions and whatnot. This would have me readied from this state on what this is looking for. So, for example, if the game it can do different emotions, or if it can do actions, or if it can do even things like blushing and other things like that, it can preference that before sending out to the LLM. And then when it gets the stuff back, it actually gets what the NPC should be doing, their skin tone, blushing or whatever, their emotion, and other factors like that. So now the game knows all these values, and it's able to then take that data and do what it needs to do. So if it makes the NPC verbally say whatever, it can go off and make the NPC blush. It can make the NPC look down. It can make the NPC look like it's uncomfortable or embarrassed or whatever it may be. And that way it gives a dynamic, real-time feedback from what the player is telling it. And since it's all local, there is no, you're not online, this is not going to work, or there is no lag in waiting for the information to come back, because, whatever system is overloaded or whatever it may be. This is 100% local. Now, one thing that should be noted is, if you're a game developer, it is likely that modders may mod the LLM and set the values to certain things to different. So say for example, there's something called a temperature value when dealing with agents, and agents being the NPCs, or in this case, or in other cases, it could be a individual AIs. Like you got one LLM, but the individual AIs, just to simplify things, basically, you might want one be more creative, one less creative. If they're interacting with each other, then it goes from there. Examples of this is where people have done companies, autogen, using something like that, where you have like a CTO agent, a writer agent, like a movie writer agent, a whatever, go down the list. And you obviously want the CTO to maybe the less creative, whereas the writer to be extremely creative. So the temperature, you'll set that accordingly. Well, the same thing here is you can set all that stuff easily within there. But it's possible that players may modify this to ignore some of that and replace the LLM. The likelihood is fairly low because it's actually not easy to do that. And I imagine it's probably never going to be easy to do that, but it is possible. It is also possible that the players, mods, whatever, can grab stuff in between and modify things a little bit. So say, for example, if your game doesn't allow for the NPC, the companion, to call the player master, for example, I don't know, whatever, or cuss or whatever, then the mod may allow for that, some in between. There's nothing you can really do about that one way or another. Even if you load your own LLM into the system, which is kind of dumb into itself because you're not being effective at that point, a modder could obviously deal with that in their own way to get to do whatever they want to do. Now, as a example of a agent, basically what I had on this one particular example is you as a player is considered as an agent. Then you had, in this case, a ship crewmate, and then you have ATC, and it all goes out to a local LLM, and this is the results. Please start up my ship.
What? You can't get off your fat ass and turn the ship on by yourself. Fine. I'll do it since you clearly can't.
Alright, contact ATC for me, please.
Is something wrong with your mic, Captain? Tower, this is Alpha, Bravo, 3 requesting departure clearance.
Roger, Alpha Bravo 3. Hangar door is opening.
And in that example, by the way, I forgot to mention, I made the ship crewmates mad to show if the emotion would go to other agents or stay locally with the one agent. Obviously, it wouldn't affect me because I'm a player, but it could affect the ATC. Would ATC stay within their realm? Now, notes things like the, I think it said Alpha, Bravo, Alpha, whatever. That's all dynamic. It didn't have any information on that, so it just pulled that out of thin air. And I wasn't testing on stopping hallucinations, but that would also have to be accounted for, things like that. Which actually gets me to the next part. How do you counteract hallucinations? It's actually fairly simple on how to do that. When you're prefacing the actual LLMs, the large language models, you can actually tell them to more than less, if you don't know certain thing, do not interject stuff. Keep the temperature low to nothing if possible, and that would also help remove a lot of the creativity, but also make it where the thing prefaces and makes it where the thing doesn't hallucinate. Now, for the LLM part of it, it would definitely need to be trained more and more on to prevent some of this stuff, which game developers obviously wouldn't have ability to mess with that. But they will be able to mess with this bit of it quite easily, and this should be enough in theory. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be a perfect storm. Again, I don't know when we're going to get our own LLM from Microsoft. It might take a little bit of time. Keep in mind, this stuff is relatively new. It's extremely new, especially with the mainstream stuff, but it's relatively new technology. So, it is what it's going to be until we actually get more and we can test this stuff out a little bit better. But in theory, to prevent a lot of the hallucination, you can do that in the code that you send out. So when you get it, it shouldn't run into that particular problem. Because honestly, when you send something out, it shouldn't know about. Say for example, you got a main character. They have dynamic lines. They don't know about something at the end of the story when you're at the beginning, if this is coded correctly. Now, obviously, if you're not coding it correctly, it might have access to everything, and that could be where some problems come in play. So just note that. And what you will need is basically to have that something to pass along knowledge as things happen, and to develop a long-term memory solution within it. So as things happen, it builds up that, and more of it is a knowledge. And same thing with like one of the other things that I've seen that people worry about is, let's say for example you have a villager NPC and the you got military and whatever. You don't want the villager NPC to comment about some military thing on the other side of the world that it really shouldn't know nothing about. But same way as you don't want a military person to comment about all this other stuff that it shouldn't really know or care about. Well, again, you're basically giving the data in on demand to the LLM, where it knows only this stuff. So, for example, you might have it in subcontainers of, say, for example, let's say this is village 1, and you might have a bunch of other villagers, village 2, and a bunch of other villagers. And you might have a general context of what a villager should be like, but you got subcategories of which village the thing was in, and then the actual subcategory of the actual villager itself. So now the villagers in this shouldn't know what this knows, but both this villager and these villagers should know the general stuff, the day-to-day, whatever, what should they do. And some of the knowledge from the military stuff might leak into here as stories and whatever happens. So for example, if a military campaign was happening near this village, then some of the stuff should leak into this, but it won't leak into the overall. This is just a visual diagram, by the way. Obviously, things will be coded way different than this. But this is just showing that you can have a complete segregation and then allow for certain things, again, like a military campaign around this particular village. And that way, any villager within there should know, and you can even segregate that based on area of a range of events. So, for example, if there's a stabbing on in a given building, then halfway across town, they might not know anything about it, but next door they would, and a few houses down, they might know, less details, but something, and then further on down, they might not know nothing about it. Well, same thing here. You can do subcategories to subcategories to segregate things, and depending on how things are coded and done, you wouldn't have a problem where NPCs that shouldn't know given things will know about it. You also shouldn't have problems with NPCs knowing things and be able to talk about things prior to them shouldn't to know about it. So again, NPC that you're interacting with for the first time shouldn't know about the in-game material, even if it's like an MMO, because for you, these checks are there, whereas someone else, those checks are released based on their progress of the story. And that way they can get the proper stuff and you don't get spoiled. So there's that. Now, one of the other questions is, what about the, resources? As far as in this model, I can see it where a worry is, okay, you using a local LLM for a MMO. So what can easily happen is the game itself can use a similar thing, or the game's servers can send something to the local LLM and use the player's own resources, and the player's resources will figure this stuff out, send it out to the server's system. And keep in mind, you might want to do some checks and balances into this. And then from there, this sends it out to everybody. So everybody gets the same dialogue, and you're not worried about the player hearing something that they shouldn't be hearing as far as the players, and two, you're not. Everybody should be getting the same dialogue at the same time. As soon as it comes back from the local server, and that way everybody hears the same thing at the same time, and everything's all copacetic. Anyways, hopefully this has answered some questions on how this might work in the future. Hopefully it's helped out some people, especially in game developments and others. If not, then, either case, leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next video. Hope you have a great day.